the biggest issue we have is that we focus so much on talent. And people think that you're born with talent, and that narrative is what holds people back. Because the truth is, the great athletes are not born that way, they're made. And so what it really means to shift your ideas about talent, to really see yourself as someone who's working towards, right? Talent, if we think about it in a physical sense, is a starting point, but in fact, talent is developed. So how do we get there? So one of the leading bodies of research in sports, it also applies to school, to life, is really about your mindset. And so what we find is that a lot of people have what's called a fixed mindset. They believe that what you're capable of is already inside you, right? So you have limitations physically in terms of your intellectual ability, your personality, you just are who you are. Whereas a growth mindset is very much this idea that your personality can change, your physical ability can change, right? And that when you work to perfect a skill, it's literally what defines you. And so when you read through this, right, think about which of these ideas you find yourself, like, this is what I believe. Okay, so if we look at fixed mindset first, failure is the limit of my abilities. I'm either good at it or I'm not. My abilities are unchanging. I don't like to be challenged. I can either do it or I can't. My potential is predetermined. When I'm frustrated, I give up. Feedback and criticism are personal. I stick to what I know. Okay? Now, in a growth mindset, failure is an opportunity to grow. I can learn to do anything I want. Challenges help me to grow. My effort and attitude determine my abilities. Feedback is constructive. I'm inspired by the success of others. I like to try new things. So these are literally mindsets that have been written about forever. And within the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset is the difference between a champion and a person who gives up on sports early. No joke. We see lots of parents who their kids come out for 6, 7-year-old soccer, and their kid's not good at it, and the parent's like, my kid's not gonna be an athlete. Let's move on, let's try music. Right? Whereas the greatest athletes are the ones who have that failure. And they see those setbacks as opportunities to improve who they are, and they embrace it, and they tackle it. And it's that mindset, what it means to see that barrier and say, not for me, that barrier's not for me, that's for somebody else. And I think about, how am I gonna get over that barrier? How am I going to break through that barrier so that I can become the athlete that I want? And so I'm gonna share with you 3 rules today, and it's really all we have time for, but 3 rules about how to develop a champion's mindset. So number 1 is a fixed mindset person in sports wants to look good or talented at all costs. They will even make their teammate look bad in order to make themselves look better. A growth mindset athlete is all about learning. So I also coached swimming for a number of years. I started a team. When I left to take my first faculty position at a university, we had 700 kids on our swim team. We went to US Nationals, which is where they pick the Olympics, and our team finished 7th in the nation. And my favorite story from coaching are 2 best friends, Courtney and Brooke. So both of them went on to swim Division I. One went on to swim at Stanford, the other went on to swim at the University of Michigan. Both amazing athletic universities, right? I mean, just among the best places in the country you can be. But Brooke was 6 feet tall. She, from the time she was little, was winning. Brooke would dive into the pool and come up a half a body length ahead of everybody. She just had one of those bodies. She was very athletic. In fact, both of her brothers also got Division I scholarships, one in swimming, one in water polo. They were just, their family's great athletes. Brooke's best friend was 5'2", had these tiny little hands, right? Swimming is all about catching the water. right? It's having big feet, big hands, you know, it's like having natural fins on. And so what's interesting about Courtney is that Courtney ends up being just as good as Brooke. Both of them went to Olympic trials. Brooke missed making the Olympic team by 1 slot. Okay, Courtney went to Olympic trials, and yet everybody knew Brooke would do it. Nobody believed Courtney would do it. So who's my favorite athlete? Hands down, Courtney. I loved both of them. They were actually just amazingly humble and kind people. But Courtney was my favorite story because literally everything about her told her that she should not be good. And from the time she was like 8, 9 years old, this little kid worked harder than anybody else. She never missed a day of practice. She was there at 5 in the morning. She was there at 5 at night. She put in the time. She took extra lessons with our coaches. I mean, Courtney was literally all about perfecting her technique and working with her body to become good. So my point is, in that story, we refused to let anybody tell her she couldn't. She refused to believe that her body, her hands, her feet could be a limitation. And so this is, like, when we think about this, right, it's that idea that I'm gonna perfect my skill. So ways that people can assess this in terms of basketball, the main thing I want when I play basketball is to show how good I am at it. It's much more important for me to learn new skills and perfect them than it is to score the most points. So I'm not out there to be the high scorer. I'm actually out there to get better every day. That's my mentality. I'm gonna come out, I'm gonna show you, but I'm gonna show you I have that desire to win, but I know that winning requires perfecting my technique. And so when I'm out there, someone steals the ball from me, I take a note, what happened? I'm gonna note it next time, I'm gonna protect that ball better, I'm gonna work on my dribble, my crossover, right? I mean, that mentality, every time something doesn't go right, I think to myself, I'm gonna take note, I'm not gonna get caught up in it, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna work on that next time. So I wanna use Tiger Woods as an example of the first rule. So Tiger Woods, we all know, is a great golfer. And what many people know about Tiger Woods is that he was the youngest Masters winner ever, and at the Masters he got the lowest score ever. But what people don't know about Tiger Woods is that the first time he went to the Masters, which was the time before he won, he got the highest score, which is a bad thing in golf. He performed terribly. And what defines Tiger Woods is that he left that day and he went back and he took his game apart. And he rebuilt his game from the most basic part of his swing all the way through to how he moved his body. And it's that courage, right? So often we think if something's working, I don't want to change it. You become afraid of change. That's absolutely not how he thought about it. And so he spent that whole next year going back to the basics and really perfecting it so that he had more control over his swing. And so the second rule of becoming a champion is really about effort. So fixed mindset people don't want to be seen as working too hard. They don't want to be seen as caring too much, right? To tell the truth, when I work hard at basketball, it makes me feel like I'm not very good at it. Growth mindset people say, work hard, effort is key. The harder you work at basketball, the better you'll be at it. And these are items from a survey that assesses whether people are growth or fixed mindset. And so when you think about effort, right, I want to take you to the idea of GOAT, right, the greatest of all times. So, you know, we often spend a lot of time enamored by athletes who are the greatest of all time. Right now we're talking about, is Tom Brady the greatest of all time? Was Peyton the greatest football player of all time? Right? Is LeBron James the greatest of all time? Many people would argue Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And so when we think about this, right, some would argue Diana Taurasi is the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Right? She's certainly been ranked as such. Others, maybe Cheryl Swoops, maybe Tamika Hutchings, maybe Lisa Leslie, right? I mean, Maya Moore is not even in the discussion, but I'd say she's pretty damn amazing, right? So, my point is, when we talk about goats, we often talk about their amazing ability as though they just woke up one day and they were great. But the truth is, and so I'm going to tell you about a research study that was done. So there's a guy, and don't fade away, because I'm telling you, this is one of those studies that when I learned about it, it literally changed my life. So there's a guy named Anders Ericsson who got funding from the National Science Foundation to study the greatest of all time people in art, music, sports, science, literature, around the world. So he composed a panel of people, of scientists, right, in each of these areas, and said, tell me who the greatest are. And so they had 1,500 greatest of all time across all of these different pieces. And what they did is they studied their lives. So what made someone the greatest of all time? So what is fascinating about this study is, do you know that when they looked at these people when they were 10 years old, they were indistinguishable from their peers. In basketball, they were not different than their peers. In art, people were not different. What defines someone becoming the greatest of all time is actually the amount of time they spend working at their thing. And so Anders Ericsson comes up with the key ingredient to become the greatest of all time is 10,000 hours. So those who are the greatest of all time they spend 10,000 more hours on their thing, right? Sports, music, than other people in the sports. So if you start adding it up, 10,000 hours can seem like a lot, but it's actually not. When you start breaking it down, it means that when someone else works 2 hours, you put in 4. And so in essence, what makes people great, often great scientists are not good at other things. Often great athletes are not good at other things. And the reason is that you're obsessed. What makes someone the greatest of all time is that you literally develop an obsession for the thing that you love. So much so that you're willing to put in that kind of time. Now, I want to be really clear. The other thing about goats is that they don't just put in the time, they put in the time to perfect their skill. So it's not about shooting 1,000 baskets a day, it's actually about every shot being exactly the same. I've developed my technique, I know my follow through, and what happens, what we know, is that you develop what's called muscle memory. So you guys, have you heard that term, luck in sports is practice meeting opportunity? Have you heard that? Okay, so often when we talk about, like Michael Jordan was famous for his half-court shot. I mean, the number of times, I loved watching him play. The number of times he'd take a shot from half-court or even further back, and it would go in, and people would be like, oh my God, he's so lucky. No. So when you perfect your technique, even when you're taking a crazy shot, your body develops what's called muscle memory. And so it takes 3,000 times. When you're trying to change something about your shot, it takes 3,000 times doing it exactly in the new way in order for you to develop muscle memory, where it becomes automatic for you. You don't have to think about it anymore. So many of you are too young to drive, but there are some older adults in the room. You can nod if you've had this experience. Driving home. And you get home and you realize you don't remember driving home, right? You literally were on autopilot. Your body drove you home. You've done it so many times that you drove without really thinking about driving. That's muscle memory. Your brain develops muscle memory. Every single muscle you have in your body has the ability to develop muscle memory. And so when you change something in your shot, often in the beginning, it does make it look worse for a while. The reason is you don't have muscle memory. But the mindset of a champion is that I'm gonna keep doing it until I get this new shot just right. And finally, the third rule has to do with what we do in the face of setbacks. So a fixed mindset person will try to hide their mistakes. They'll try to conceal them. A growth mindset person says, come on over here, I'm ready. They see mistakes as opportunities to grow, and from day one, every mistake I make, I'm gonna confront it, and I'm gonna fix it, right? Like what drives me nuts is when people make the same mistake over and over and over again, and as a coach, you feel like a broken record. And then we'd go to a swim meet, and the kid would be crying around, I'm not getting any better. And you're like, you know what? Because you haven't actually practiced the things that we've told you. And so the mind of a champion is about perfecting your skill. So much so that when you have to take the wicked, wild half-court shot, your chance of it going in is greater because your body automatically knows what arc to take, how far it needs to go, you're gonna follow through at the end, right? All those pieces are gonna be there. You're gonna find a way to put your body in the best opportunity to be successful when you get down there. And so I just wanna share here, right? The story of Michael Jordan is one that from a growth mindset perspective is absolutely the most amazing story. Right, so here's a quote he says, I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career, have lost almost 300 games, 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. But what most people don't know about Michael Jordan is that he didn't make his freshman basketball team. He did not get picked. And so these are those moments when athletes quit. But Michael Jordan went home after not making it, told his mom, and he's crying around about it. And his mom said, if you love basketball that much, then it starts tomorrow. And you gotta get up tomorrow and you gotta work at it. And so what people don't know about Michael Jordan is he was literally a gym rat. Like so from the day he didn't make the team, he got up every morning and went to the gym before school and made 1,000 shots. And he was so regimented. He was all about basics. He could do amazing things. I mean, you could see that guy launch himself from the free throw line and slam dunk it. And people would talk about how great his leap was and how, but the truth is, what made Michael Jordan great is that he perfected every aspect of his game. His dribble, his follow through, his shot, how he set himself to take the shot, right? Balance, elbows, eyes, follow through. Like those are key ingredients of being a great basketball player. And he came back the next year and didn't just make the team, he became a starter. So when you think about setbacks, right, they are literally opportunities for you to be motivated and to think about how you're gonna push yourself past that obstacle and on to the next. And so he said, if you're trying to achieve, there will be roadblocks. I've had them, everybody has had them. But obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it, go through it, and work around it. And so what happens after a failure really defines you. If you get up the next day, or even right after, and you decide, I'm gonna go work on that, that's the mindset of a champion. When you think like, oh, whatever, I'm just like, you're gonna be avoidant, you're not gonna work on your game, you're gonna be unmotivated after a big loss, right? That tells you something about you too. But the nice thing is that's something about you can change. A mindset is something you wake up every day getting to work on your mindset. So, you know, when I started CrossFit, I was like 40 years old, and I just was like, I kind of got talked into it. They had started a Tulalip CrossFit. And I walked in there and I was watching people and I was like, I am never going to be able to do those things. Came back a week later, I was like, well, that's not the right attitude, right? And I learned to do all of those things. Bar muscle ups, pull-ups, chest to bar pull-ups, all of it. By the time, like 5 years in, I could back squat like 280 pounds. I could front squat 210 pounds. But it was literally like one thing I have learned as an adult is that it's all about how you tackle it. And so I just started, I asked my coach, hey, I want to be able to do this. What do I have to do? What's first step to being able to do a pull-up? He said, all right, here's a band. This is what you need to work on every day. So this is it, folks. The mindset of a champion is all about how you overcome these pieces. When you have a fixed mindset, you also have a give up mindset. You're more defensive when you get feedback. One of the most frustrating things as a coach is when you're giving a kid feedback and the kid goes, I know. And you think to yourself, if you knew, I wouldn't be telling you. This is the kid that you want to grab by the shoulder and be like, you don't know anything. But they found about that. Don't ever do that to a kid. But seriously, they're the most frustrating kid because you're trying to help them, but in their mind, and this is the part that helped me to have empathy for kids like that, is that kids who have that thought in their mind, when you're giving them help, what they are thinking is that you think they're not good. That's how they're interpreting your help. And so I've had to learn to say to kids, stop. Just stop for a second. I'm not telling you you're not good. In fact, I see the potential for you to be great, but for you to be great, you have to learn to take feedback. And it's such a critical thing, right? But the other piece is when you feel defensive, when that's your way of being, you're more likely to engage in actions to try to feel superior to others, to retreat, right? To go away when things aren't going well, to blame others for your failure, rather than seeing yourself as in charge of your life. And so I want to end today with a quote from Diana Taurasi. She says, up 50 or up 10 or up 2, I play the same way. The minute you change the way you play, the minute you get worse as a player. So practice is like a game every day. Every shot you take should be like you're taking it in a game. If you're just out there and you're kind of flipping the ball around, that's not practice. That doesn't make you a better athlete. The mindset to be great is literally the mindset to be obsessed with skill, obsessed with technique, and the willingness to put in the effort every day to get you there. And so the mindset of a champion is a growth mindset, and I'm gonna work at it every day. And what's nice is you're all really young. You have so much time. If this is something you care about, if basketball is something you love, there's not a single person in here who can't have the mindset of a champion, who can't wake up tomorrow and say, I'm gonna put in that time, I'm gonna perfect my technique. If I'm not good at dribbling, I'm gonna do my dribbling drills every day for a half hour. And it will amaze you the way in which you will improve and how exciting that feedback will be for you to have other people notice your improvement. But being a great athlete is not about luck. And if you make a shot, it's not about luck. You had practice that got you there. But if you want to be better and you want that shot to go in, 7 times out of 10, that requires time and effort. So great that you guys are out here. I hope you guys had a great time today. These are my 3 rules of, and it's literally not mine, it actually is from the literature, let me be clear. But they're really robust findings. and everybody can embrace it, everybody can become it. It's really about the decisions you make in your mind every day. Every time you step on the court, every time you go to practice, how you approach it is everything. Thank you.
Thank you.